Dr. Hovind, I love your doctoral thesis. I've torn it to pieces with house and gaffle. I can't remember when I last pissed myself laughing. It's a good thing the thesis mopped the piss off the floor.
Welcome to part 10 of this read-through and peer review of Kent Hovind's doctoral dissertation, which was published on wikileaks.org on December 9th, 2009. If you have not yet seen the previous parts of this series, then I recommend that you go back and see those first, as I will be starting off in this episode exactly where I left off in the last. In the last episode, Kent told us all about Cain and his amusingly shaped vegetables. In this episode, Kent starts off talking about the flood. Bullshit detectors at the ready? Let's wade in. The evil in the world continued to get worse, until God had to destroy the inhabitants of the earth with a flood. Of course he did. He couldn't just show them the error of their ways. No, he had to wipe the bastards off the face of the earth. When the flood was over, Satan began to work on Noah's descent. The story of evolution continues in Genesis 9:22.
And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without.
Ham, instead of doing the wise thing of covering up his father's nakedness, went out and laughed about it to his two brothers, evidently. 'Cause we're presuming an old bloke pissed out of his brain with his cock out was obviously amusing to him. This resulted in a curse being placed upon Ham's son, Canaan, which Kent spells wrong. God shoots and misses again. Ham's pride caused him to try to make his father look bad. Because, of course, laid there, stark bollock naked, in a tent, pissed off your head on grape juice, doesn't make you look bad at all. Anyway, Kent continues. People who are always cutting down others are usually motivated by pride, or lack of it when it's motivated by low self-esteem. But we digress. They think making someone else look worse will somehow make themselves look better. Apart from when they have a pop at you, Kent, 'cause from no matter which direction you look at it, the bullshit you come out with simply just looks like bullshit. He goes on. The story continues in Genesis 10. The people had been commanded by God to spread out and replenish the earth. Some decided instead to rebel against God's authority and exalt themselves. Genesis 10:8-9 says,
And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord.
The word before in that verse means in the face of the Lord, or against the Lord. Well, I'm glad some of it makes sense, Kent, because the rest of it makes no bloody sense whatsoever. Or are you just making shit up again, Kent? Anyway, Kent continues. Nimrod's rebellion against the Lord caused him to begin construction of the Tower of Babel. We see this tower mentioned in Genesis 11:1-9.
And the whole earth was of one language, and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. And they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city, and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had builded.
Bloody tourist.
And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did here confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth.
This tower represented man's desire to exalt himself to the seat of God. Yes, Kent, that and really build a tall bloody tower. The pride of the rebels calls the people to want to disobey God. Yes, and of course we see from previous scripture that God had said, Thou shalt not build towers. We don't? Oh, okay then. They wanted to stay together and build big cities, even though God had commanded them to spread out and fill the earth. And I'm guessing that's why God likes hillbillies and rednecks, which is still so true today. But Kent continues. Babylon was one of the first cities built after the flood. Presuming, of course, that the flood actually happened, but never mind. It still exists today. Well, Kent, it might have done back in 1991, but since the invasion of Iraq and a number of tank divisions parked on top of Babylon, we're guessing that a good portion of it now no longer does. The people reluctantly spread out after God judged them by confusing the languages. At this point, they spoke all different languages because the Lord confounded their speech. Of course, we are presuming here that it didn't occur to any of them to try and learn each other's language. I'm sure for several generations they told stories about how it used to be in the good old days when there was just one big city and everyone was one happy family. And I'm sure, Kent, that, yes, by your reasoning, yes, they probably did tell many stories, but as they all spoke different languages, nobody could bloody understand a word. But he continues. As we trace the history of evolution, it becomes slightly confusing at this point because there are going to be several different branches on the tree. Kent, it's been confusing all the way through. You see, when you're talking about allele frequency within a population over time and its variance, and prattling on about the Tower of Babel, confusion is inevitable. You see, you might as well be talking about the numerous different ways that you can serve a potato. It's about as relevant. But anyway, he goes on. I will focus on just two of the main branches. Oh, thank God for that. When the people left the Tower of Babel, they took their false religion of evolution with them. They still hoped that they could exalt themselves to godhood. For the sake of the study, we shall call them the Eastern and Western branches of evolution. Call them what you want, Kent, but for the sake of clarity and accuracy, we shall just call them bullshit.